Thanks very much. Thanks, Steve. Yeah. So, firstly, hello, everyone. It's really nice to see everyone here. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay, great. Really nice. Can you hear me at the back? Yeah, great, cool. I feel like I'm about to start a stand-up, but I won't. I was thinking about that in later life. You know, one of those really scary things that you should maybe do at some point, but I won't start this evening. So I have something prepared, you'd be glad to know. So who am I? I could have probably spent an hour trying to answer that question myself, but I thought I'd go for a quick one. I looked at LinkedIn. This is what LinkedIn says, so it must be true. So pretty much for the last 19 years, I've spent time working on innovative projects in education, setting up things in education, and hopefully, in a small way, trying to lead change in education. Where is this? Yes, why? Sorry, what's the question? Who am I? I think this is reordered slightly. Okay. Yeah, what am I doing now? Sorry, this is reordered a little bit. What am I doing now? I work here. In fairness, that's a slight exaggeration. I actually work here, which is an organisation called Screen Ireland, which is the Irish government agency for supporting the film, television, animation and game sectors in Ireland. But actually we're quite connected. It is actually part of an international, essentially, network of film production, much of which does come from the States. And my role within that is essentially helping people within the sector, from writers, producers, directors, creators, talent at all levels, crew, animators, people in the game sector, essentially become better at what they do. So it'd be essentially to bring stories to life. And our whole vision is essentially bringing creative, powerful stories to life. That's the whole mission and focus of Screen Ireland. Before that, I worked in something called the Innovation Academy in UCD for 8 mostly great years, but pretty intense. Some of our activities there. We have some people from the Innovation Academy here this evening. Woo! Yes, Alan. And before that, I was a co-founder of the School for Social Entrepreneurs. And before that, sorry, this is really quite different from what I thought I had posted. Before that, I worked with an organisation called SUAS, and I was a co-founder of SUAS. And that's how I first met Steve. And I'll come to that in a short while toward the end of this. Sorry, I'm a little bit lost on these. So why I love it. What's showing there? Yeah. I think, there's kind of an intellectual reason why I love working in education. And the intellectual kind of reason, which I do genuinely believe, is we're at a time of disruption. This kind of sounds, we hear this so much we almost don't hear it anymore. But we're having, not only kind of like once in a generation type challenges, we're having once in a civilization and in a species type challenge around just climate change. Like, we don't know what that is. By definition, we haven't been able to have that before. And largely our education system is going, well, do what we did before and do a little bit more than that. You're kind of going, really? Everything is going to change. So why are we learning in a way a model that's preparing us well for a world that no longer exists? So for me, things like creativity, leadership, innovation, interpersonal skills, and fundamentally a sense of agency, that I'm here and I can actually do something with my life. Hopefully I can do something positive with my life. And hopefully I can work with other people. So together, and you heard that story this evening, together we can do something that we couldn't do together on our own. And that fundamentally for me is what education is about changing. Yes, you need to learn reading, writing, arithmetic, but essentially that developing that sense of agency, that sense of what's possible for you and what's possible for the world. So why I love it, the real reason I love it, hopefully you can hear this now, I just love this. This is the best description of that I've ever seen. This is actually a photograph of you can see the little trees there, of a poster I saw in Delhi in India. And I sense, so this is, poor kids, not leaving with, yes, I can read and write, but I am, I learn, I can. Again, that sense of possibility, of moving past where you are to where you could be, both individually and as a society. And for me, this comes down to this. So I do think this is something I'm good at. Others may disagree. I'm not saying I'm great at it, but I'm certainly better at it than other things I've tried. And there's that sense of, and you heard that in this evening, I think in all the speakers this evening, that's something that they really found, whether it's making bread, whether it's working the wind and the water, something that they themselves are really passionate about, and something that the world needs, the intersection of those two. So how I ended up here. So I'm the one on your right. It's me, that's my younger brother, Ross. So basically, I was kind of lucky. Ever since a young boy, I knew what I wanted to do. And this is here my dad. My dad unfortunately died fairly soon after this photograph was taken. And I don't know whether, I do believe that the sort of stories of our childhood do very much inform our lives afterwards. I don't mean this for good or for bad, probably for both. But I do kind of wonder, was it, did that make me, in a sense, want to become a doctor? So I wanted to become a doctor since I was about the age of 4. And that continued on. So I kind of knew I kind of wanted to help people. And as I went to school, here's me at the Young Scientists, I was slightly nerdy and probably very nerdy, to be honest. I still am. I like science, I wanted to help people, and doing medicine is generally, to be honest, not the kind of thing that people try and talk you out of. Oh, you shouldn't do that. Have you thought about doing something else? No, that's great, you want to do medicine. So to be honest, I was probably expecting kind of a bit of this. So I did it in school, went to college, all that. I was maybe expecting a little bit of this. Perhaps a little bit of this. And maybe even a touch of that. And to be honest, all those elements are actually in healthcare. But to be honest, when I actually started work as an intern on the 1st of July 1993, I found this. Okay, that's a bit extreme and a bit unfair to the healthcare system. What I found is a bit more like this. Just this really chaotic, confused system. And I was like, this is just mad. It just doesn't work. Excuse me. It doesn't connect together. So something like maybe this. And I kind of asked myself, there was two things I was really like. One, why didn't our education say, look, you're going into this really bonkers dysfunctional system, and we're going to give you skills to improve that bonkers, dysfunctional system. And also, two, what was the other part? Skills. I've lost my train of thought on this one. Normally doesn't happen. Sorry, I haven't done this for a while. So yeah, why we didn't get the skills for this? And also, yeah, why isn't anyone trying to change it? So there was kind of a real sense of, oh, this is terrible. Yeah, sure, it is, you're right, it's terrible, everyone complaining about everyone else. But yeah, but why isn't someone go, this is just crazy, why don't we make it better? So I became very frustrated, and I kind of realized I was more interested in how kind of teams and organizations work than necessarily in helping individual patients. So that was, good too, but just really wasn't, I felt, where my passions were. So I decided to leave, and basically I did. And on July 1st, 1994, I stepped out of the hospital, my last day as a doctor, and the sky was bluer and the grass was greener, and I hadn't got a clue what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I've rarely felt as sure, as confident about things as I did that day. Anyway, through kind of a stroke of, excuse me, a good friend of mine was going to work with a charity in Africa, and he said, why don't you see if you can come along with me? So I inquired, and I ended up going to Nairobi. And when I was in Nairobi, that was in 1994, nearby a country called Rwanda was coming to the end of a genocide. It was the end of a civil war, and the tide turned, and the government basically said, all the people, look, you need to flee because the Tutsis are going to come in and they're going to kill us, which is not actually true, but when that's what you're told on television and radio, that's what everyone believed. And essentially overnight, in a country the size of Munster with 8 million people just got up, left their homes with what they could carry, and left and went into the neighboring Zaire and Tanzania. It looked a little bit like this. And very sadly, this. So people were dying, essentially it was a cholera epidemic, so people were literally dying and the bodies being placed at the side of the road. Just dying actually initially of dehydration. And then arriving in camps that looked a bit like this. This is Kibumba. And this lilac bus, that was actually me. I wasn't driving the bus, but I organised essentially a series of buses that were offering mobile rehydration clinics. And amidst all of that, you found scenes like this, and this, and this. And I was like, even in this terrible situation, what are people trying to do? They're trying to get on with their lives. And really that fundamental, Steve alluded to it, people are just people. Wherever they're from, whatever their starting point, they mostly want, a good life and a better life for their kids. Excuse me. So, and the real tragedy of this, and the tragedy in most tragedies, is that they're preventable. We kind of see these things coming and we tend to only react afterwards, including in our own society, including around sustainability. That doesn't seem sensible, does it? So I went back to Nairobi a year later, this time to work in kind of more long-term stuff like healthcare and education. So this is the Mukuru slum in Nairobi. And when I was there, I was very, very lucky to meet this lady, Betty Nyagoha, who at that time was setting up a school, a very humble school, with just a few hundred kids, but with great ambitions. And a few years later, they had 1,000 kids. And then a few years later, they got kind of more money and built proper buildings. But really the important thing was not just the buildings, was the quality of education. So Betty was like, the kids here are as good as the kids from anywhere else. And there was a real emphasis, excuse me, not just on sort of, the regular education, but on the choir, on sports. So the kids were leaving there with a real sense of, yes, we can. We can be good. It's just, and the kids there they were beating kids from all the expensive schools and the fancy schools in sports and music and drama. And this is a more recent photograph. This is actually a lot of the earliest students, some I would have met in 1994, many of whom have some of whom have gone on to secondary school and a few have gone on to university, which in that community is like becoming an astronaut, essentially. It's just an amazing thing to happen. So this lady Betty has kind of got a whole new generation. And through my early experiences with Katoto, I saw, education, when you do it well, it doesn't just really be educated, it changes your future. And actually can change the future for a community and potentially for a whole country. So I came home though, I was like, what the hell am I going to do now? I worked in the corporate sector for a while, which was great, I learned a lot. And in GE, Enterprise Ireland, and when I was in Enterprise Ireland, I met a group of young people to the right here, particularly Michael, Brian, Laura, who were setting up this organisation called SUAS. So I was getting involved with them, and I was kind of sort of promoted in Enterprise Ireland. And then I met the new incoming CEO, look, I'm going to join this new startup, a group of students are setting up this organisation. And I really was like, I'm never going to get a regular job again for the rest of my life. But I think as you've kind of heard from the other speakers here today, and I'm sure from Kate very soon, you kind of step into that. And for a while, it's just like, it's just flowing. Everything within you is just aligned with that sense of purpose. It's a very powerful space to be in. That sort of sense of the universe conspires with you to make things happen. Serendipity, things seem to fall in your lap, things emerge. It doesn't last, to be honest, that sensation. I think it's a little like holding the third rail. I think a lot of it is, for me, the learnings are around really getting out of your own way. And there's a lot of stress and anxiety that comes with that as well. So not kind of hold on tightly and let go lightly, that kind of thinking. So now, SUAS then grew. So this is what we were doing just a few years later. So we're running programs in Ireland, India, and Kenya. And my advice, to be honest, my real advice is don't listen to advice. Sorry, no, that's not to be insulting to the previous speakers, but a more nuanced version of that is, when you hear advice, I think you'll get one of three reactions. The first reaction is like, if someone has said something this evening, or their story kind of lands with you now, because it's right for you at this time, and you go, oh yeah, that's, that kind of really makes sense for me. I get that, that makes sense. It's sort of speaking to you now. Or two, if it's also like, nah, that doesn't apply to me at all. I'm a great listener. It definitely does apply to you, but it's maybe a little too early for you to hear it. And if it just kind of is like easy listening for you, it's just not for you at this time. That's my one. So like sort of attune yourself to when you hear advice, what really makes sense for you right now. But all that said, some things reflecting on this evening. I love this. It's okay to be lost. So a lot of my changes have become because I've allowed myself to basically step out of something not knowing what's coming next. And there's a lot of value in our society in being clear. Oh, you know what you don't want to do, that's great, that's great, that's great. But it's like, I haven't got a clue. Actually, I haven't got a clue at all what I want to do. It's a bit harder. And even especially as you get older, going into times where you're not so sure. For me personally, they've been often the greatest times. And I've ended up doing things. Like one was like, how are you doing that? I'm like, well, it does actually make some sense. But if we allow ourselves to let go of who we were, it gives us more space to become who we might become. So nearly the end. Yeah, I love this one. And you heard this in all the speakers this evening. Yeah, this one too. You just never know what people are going through. This is the one that I've had to work to learn. You never know what other people are going through. So always really just realize that you don't know that. And kindness lasts. You remember a kind word, kind talk. We kind of heard it as well from Francois earlier. This one I used to use a lot in SUAS. Whatever you do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has beauty, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. That's for Kate. And another one, if you're not sure, this is one I use a lot with programs. You know, there's that, like, it's just take don't worry about later on. Just take that initial step, like Steve here this evening. Take that initial step, and then the rest will kind of follow. The last, learn, self. But from everyone, from everything, good, bad, and indifferent. And this is a nice version of the be kind. Right? This is one I, like, particularly in the suicide days, I was extremely passionate. And I was like, why isn't everyone supporting this? And if you didn't support it, it's like, yes, you're an idiot. And it's like, you never know what's going on with other people. And there's a real power in kindness and actually meeting something not with frustration or anger, but actually empathy and understanding. And kind of sinking down to, I don't know what's going on here, let me listen rather than tell. And lastly, time. Thank you, and good luck. Good night.